بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. We've been discussing the series of Islamic economic scholars, and alhamdulillah, so far we covered a couple of scholars and their contribution in Islamic economic thought. So today we are going to talk about one of the biggest scholar of 13th century. Yeah, his name is Sheikh Ibn Taimiyah. People recognized him as Sheikh al-Islam, and he's quite famous not only because of his contribution. He's also quite famous because of few reviving concepts that he brought up. You need to know he became famous because many scholars didn't want him to become famous. I mean, I didn't mean the true scholars. Sometimes not everybody can become scholars. Yeah. Sometimes from outside they look like scholar, maybe waliullah or shuyukh, So in his time he was not famous. So I just want to tell you, we know Sheikh Ibn Taimiyah as a Sheikh al-Islam, right? But today we know him. Today we know his work and everything. But if you go back to 13th century, if you go back to the Mongol, the entry of Mongol into Iran, of course they are from Iran, the Mongol into Syria, Sham, because this is where Imam Ibn Taimiyah was born. If you look at that time period, he was not quite famous. And most of the time he spent most of his life he spent in prison. He even died in prison. Amazing stories, a couple of amazing stories about him. What I'm trying to tell here is we shouldn't be just listening to the name, because I tell you, I'm pretty sure still even today some part of the world, even today a few parts of the world still did not recognize him as a imam or as a scholar. There are many, not many, there are few among those places that I told you. There are few places they still recognize him as an infidel, as a kafir, and auzubillah. And in many places, as I told you, those places, many scholars of those places, yeah, still didn't tell their students, they didn't show the students the existence of this scholar, which is Imam Ibn Taimiyah. If anyone goes and reads his book, then all of a sudden they come and say behind, you shouldn't be reading his book. That kind of controversy that has been created within his name, right? So I just want to give you this. So this is mashallah, this is a scholar, Imam Ibn Taimiyah. His full name is Taqiyuddin Ahmad ibn Ahmad al-Halim. He was born in Haran in 22nd January 1263, corresponding to 661 Hijri. So if you look at the timeline, because we are just going from the beginning of the Hijrah, right, till to our time. So today we are in the sixth. This is actually practically 7th century of al-Hijrah, right? The previous one we talked about Imam Razi. That one comes from 5th century, right? Before that we talked about few 3rd century. Now we are going into 6th and 7th century of Hijrah. So now, according to our knowledge in history that we discussed earlier, you can see that the expansion is actually going on, right? The expansion is actually going on. Um, and you can also see that when there is an expansion of period of ruling, of politics, of governance, then when you go and you reach your border, always there's a new border actually coming. So now the Iran is actually expanding until it goes to Mongol, and then the Mongols start to invade Iran. Of course, they are from Iran, and then they started to come and started invading the Damascus, the Syria, In fact, it's been attributed to one particular um, ruler. His name is Ghazan Khan. So this Ghazan Khan was the Mongol ruler. Mm, he is been known for his diplomatic involvement. He actually he had a victorious achievement. There was a battle. It's called Marj as-Safar, which happened 1303, which ended the Mongol invasion of the 11th. So now, if you see that this Ghazan Khan, basically he was a Buddhist. He came into Damascus and then he of course he was a Buddhist, become Muslim. He came to Damascus and he stopped the Ayyubid dynasty, right? So as I told you, there were so many dynasties, right? This is the later expansion. So there was Ayyubid dynasty whereby Imam Ibn Taimiyah and his forefathers, I mean his parents, and then the generations have actually been living in that dynasty in Damascus, in Syria. Then this Ghazan Khan came and then he got victory, and then uh, he was actually having his ruling on that particular place. Uh, and you can clearly see that always the true scholars, they always react. That's why we call them true scholars, because there's a particular Quranic verses, the particular Quranic, prophetic hadith, uh, talking about, you should be react to injustice. So there were a couple of injustice going on, and then there were a couple of practices actually going on. So you need to just picture first, before we talk about any scholar, try to bring the picture and the background of that time. The time period is very important, right? So the earlier scholars were talking about, so many concepts that we discussed earlier. But Imam Ibn Taimiyah need to talk about something that, which is quite important for his time. I think with that, he actually started writing, and even he was started compiling fatwas, because there was a need of fatwas. Um, if you look at his books, fatwas, mostly his own ijtihad, and most probably he actually wanted to see the practices that was going on, and he wanted to actually give some idea, opinions, that kind of practices. He was saying that some kind of practices is actually should be prohibited, and that it created some sort of unpleasant relationship with some scholars of his time. And those particular scholars were very close to those Mongol rulers. And then they started going and complaining about Ibn Taymiyyah, that he is actually talking something against us. He is talking something against the practices of that time, especially, the Ziyarat al-Qubur, especially because this visiting the tomb and so many other things. Even Imam Ibn Taimiyah was quite dare enough to say some scholars that you have no knowledge, these kind of things. He was actually outspoken, and that was the reason why he was imprisoned all the time, right? Other than that, of course, if you want to know more about Imam Ibn Taimiyah, he was, mashallah, he was, as you know, most of the scholars, they are not, specialists in only one particular area. They always have so many other, expertise. In himself, he was a muhaddis, he was a mutakallim, theologian, he was a judge, by the way, jurisconsult, and logician. In fact, um, his teacher was Shamsuddin al-Maqdisi. He was the first Hanbali Chief Justice of Sharia in that time. Uh, when Imam Ibn Taymiyyah started learning with Imam al-Maqdisi, Shamsuddin al-Maqdisi, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah was able to give fatwa. So this is the point, please take note. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah was able to give fatwa at the age of 17. Yeah, 17, 17. We can't even imagine what we were doing at 17. Yeah, what we were doing. He was able to give fatwa, and then later he was also given the position of Chief Justice, but he didn't take it because of so many other reasons. Uh, Perhaps the reason why the politics of the time, the governance of the time, he was not happy with it. His brother used to help him. His brother used to always help him take care of all his expenses. Um, he was, yes, but you need to know that his Imam Ibn Taymiyyah's life was not so good, because he was always having, operations from many scholars as well, and also the governors. So there is no actually institute that he actually created and then offer classes like to many people. He was a kind of how do we call it? He was a revivalist, of course. In fact, people used to call him Mujad. Later, people used to uh, call him Mujaddid. He is the Mujaddid of that particular 7th century, right? In fact, you need to know when there is a scholar has a problem with government. There was a scholar have a different ideas that people were doing before. There was a scholar is mujtahid and everything. Of course, people who comes late, they may take some of his idea and then convert into something, right? But it doesn't. That is not necessary to claim that particular scholar is wrong. You know, perhaps the followers of some scholars may go to an extent that they may or misunderstood the idea of the real scholar. Exactly, that's what happened. Many actually, the one who followed, starting from Prophet Musa until Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, not necessary that uh, people still say that I follow Quran and I follow Hadith, but still they started killing people. You understand what I'm saying? They started killing. They are actually killing the innocent people, but they are saying that we are following Quran and Sunnah. And you go and ask them, they are giving you some sort of dalil, evidences, right? It's a wrong perspective, wrong understanding of the evidences. That's what leads to that kind of understanding, leads to that kind of action, which actually like killing innocent people, which is actually totally wrong. So now, of course, there are couple of ideas, couple of statements out of context. Remember this, yeah, out of context. They are always referred to Ibn Taymiyyah, whether it is a Wahhabis or Salafis or Jihadis. Yeah, I'm not here to criticize anyone. Everybody is good. But if someone comes later, call themselves that they're jihadists, they are, for example, Al-Qaeda, these kind of things. They're actually simply go back and referring to these kind of scholars like Ibn Taimiyah, which is actually totally wrong. It's out of context. So I'm just giving you an idea. People always refer to some scholars. They may call Ibn Qayyim or or maybe they may call Ibn Taymiyyah like Imam al-Ghazali or some other scholars, which is actually not necessarily true, right? Because a wrongdoing is a wrongdoing. It is not actually, Islam will never represent, will never take the charge of those people who are actually simply following this kind of guidance, which is totally unacceptable in Islam. Killing innocent people, unacceptable in Islam, right? Okay, that is actually the background that I wanted to give you. Um, Let me just go back to the slide. Okay. Okay, so his life, his father was Abdul Halim. All right, he studied at an early stage of all disciplines. All right, Qadi al-Maqdisi, I told you, authorized him to issue fatwa at the age of 17. All right. Of course, I told you about, because of the Mongol invasion, Ibn Taymiyyah family moved to Damascus in 1268, which was then ruled by the Mamluks of Egypt. So these are the history. You can actually go through the slides. Ibn Taymiyyah was an industrious student and acquainted himself with the secular and religious science of his time. Right? He devoted special attention to Arabic literature and gained mastery over grammar and lexicography, as well as studying mathematics and calligraphy. See, this is something amazing, right? To combine um, teachings, to combine expertise, different areas, specializing areas. So I think it is always, a welcoming, especially, when you are in a university like this. Subhanallah, this is amazing opportunity for you. You don't have to stick with one major, right? You can always go with two majors or three majors, or at least one major and one minor. And now even the current academic system of UIA, IIUM, is actually opening you to even go and you can jump into even different kulliyas. You want to take something in Kulliyah of Science, go ahead and take it. Kulliyah of Engineering, go ahead and take it. Kulliyah of Architecture, go ahead and take. So these are the opportunities, mashallah, you are having. Uh, we didn't we hadn't this kind of opportunities when we were studying. So I think that is one thing. You can see most of the scholars of those period that I'm talking, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh centuries. Those lecturers, actually, those scholars, they had a different majors in different area, special area of specialization. So this is one opportunity actually you can see. Right, he was very good in Arabic literature. He was very good in also mathematics, grammar. Right, he studied jurisprudence from his father and became a representative of the Hanbali school of thought. Okay, he was basically, he was a Hanbali. He also studied theology, Kalam, philosophy, and Sufism as well. He studied Sufism. Right, I'm not saying he's not. He studied Sufism and later he rejected some of the idea that Sufis brought up, right, the Sufist movement. Not, it doesn't mean that all the, and he completely ignored, or he completely rejected the entire idea of the Tasawwuf. Not like that. He actually, what people used to say, the practices of the Tasawwuf, because you see, when there was an idea and then there was a practice, right? So for example, there was an idea of seeking knowledge. That is an idea. Then there's a practice of setting up an institute like IIUM. So there is the ideology and then activity. So now Tasawwuf is actually a kind of idea. No one is actually opposed to the idea of Tasawwuf. But when it comes to practice and activities, so they have a couple of activities, and then they said you have to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the SOP, what we call it today. that kind of activities, and some of them is actually he saw that that was completely against the belief and the basic pillars of Islam. So that's why he started, rejecting those kind of activities in Tasawwuf. He also refuted the Shia, Rafida, as well as Christians and all. Of course, he was having kind of debates. There were so many Radd, they call it. They had many Radd actually refuting. His troubles with government began when he went with a delegation of ulama to talk to a Ghazan Khan, the Khan of the Mongol in Iran. Not necessarily the name Khan, not necessarily it has to be, that time it has to be Muslim name, yeah, because Khan came from that region where today we can see Iran, and then especially the Central Asia. Not necessarily the word Khan must be Muslim. Yeah, for example, today it changed. My name is Khan, and I'm not a terrorist. Yeah, so that kind of names are coming up now, because today, yeah, the most of the Khans, they already bringing the Islamic name into the subcontinent. But those days, even the word Khan, not necessarily it has to be a Muslim name. It was basically Buddhist at that time. It's a region. There is no. There was. It's according to the region, not according to the religion. Yeah. Later, of course, this Ghazan Khan actually became Muslim. He was a Buddhist. Of course, he was the Khan of the Mongol in Iran. To stop his attacks on the Muslims, it is reported that not one of the ulama dared to say anything to the Khan except Ibn Taimiyah. Ibn Taimiyah was the only scholar talk against the activities of Khan. So that was the reason why he had a lot of troubles in his governance, right? Ibn Taymiyah started delivering lectures, and when he was 30, he was offered the Chief of Justice, but he refused at the age of 30. Yes. Um, yes, he was interested in nothing except spreading knowledge. His brother used to take care of his expenses, I told you. Ibn Taymiyah life was not confined to the world of books, votes. Whenever circumstances demanded, he took part in political and public affairs too, distinguishing himself not only through his writing and speeches, but also with the sword as a brave warrior. So he was a personal personal scholar. So he was a warrior, he was a writer, he was a speaker, right? So whatever necessary. That's why I said he didn't take that kind of uh, place, kind of luxury that he can sit down and talk to people and teach to people. He actually was in ground, was going everywhere. He was actually doing all sort of things, whatever necessary that he has to do, he was doing it. And people keep on, as I told you, he was oppressing the government because of the uh, wrong belief system, wrong practical in especially in Sharia. So every time they put them in the prison, he always start writing. So most of his writing, he did it in prison while he was using the coal as an ink. Remember the coal, the coal, right? COAL. So that was kind of his pen, his ink, and he started writing and writing and writing while he was in prison. In a way, he was actually enjoying living in prison because he can actually write down, and then he used to write articles and then circulate, and that creates more problems and all. Finally, the government decided that he should be in prison, but he should not write anything. They wanted to make sure that he do not publish anything from the prison. Then what he said? Then Ibn Taymiyyah said, now they really have put me into prison. Finally, they made it, right? So that is the time that actually he said. He was actually having harsh conditions for the last 5 months of his life, at the year of 1328, corresponding to 728 after Hijri, almost, I think, if you count from his birth year, year of birth, I think around 68 or 69 years he was living. So he died actually 26 September 1328. All right. So that is actually the background of Imam Ibn Taimiyah. I think you will get more to talk about. I think that is a time frame of his life. You can actually learn more about him, about his life. Okay. So now, if we have to talk about his economic ideas, I think there are many. There are many. Let me just start talking to you about what he says about price. Why actually price? Why actually we are talking about just price? Most of the time, yeah, it's quite clear that everybody is talking about, because when it comes to business dealing and economic transactions, of course, price is actually what one of the pillar of three pillars. I think you know the three pillars of a contract. The first one is expression, offer, and acceptance. The second one is the parties that involve in that particular transaction, right? We talk about a legal capacity. You should be adult, you should be this. You shouldn't be like minor or insane or something, right? That is number two. Number three is actually subject matter, right? Al-mabi', the thing that you are selling. When it comes to mabi', there are a couple of conditions that you should know, determine what exactly you are selling, what exactly you are buying. You should know the quality of that thing, the quantity of that thing, and most importantly, you should know the price, what price actually you are giving. So these are the conditions of that third pillar. If you remember, I may just remind you that the thing that you learn in fiqh 1, right? So now he talks about this price, but most of the time, most of the scholars before him, of course, they always talk about this, but no one has done a kind of delegation, a kind of deep attention. No one has given deep attention like Imam Ibn Taimiyah has given. So that is actually practically the basic economic idea of Imam Ibn Taimiyah. There are so many ideas that we can discuss. In fact, we can discuss even the whole semester that what he has done. But this is just to give you an idea of just price. Because you see, if you want to talk about price, uh, Prophet ﷺ was asked to fix the price. Okay, starting from there, if I have to talk about Prophet was asked to fix the price. You see, now the problem was the price that time. Every time, anytime you see people, they go to the market and they started buying and selling. So they might have a kind of thing, and then they need a system come into existence, and then the system should govern to fix the price. Okay, like for example, today we have the oil price, right? We don't see the different prices for the petrol. I mean, the petrol and diesel. We don't see the different prices in Petronas and in Shell and in Caltex, right? We don't see that, right? So we see all the prices are the same. So the government is actually fixing the price, and then actually people going and then selling and buying those things. So there was a need, of course, there was a need to fix the price. That's the reason why Prophet ﷺ was asked to fix the price. And then what was the reaction of the Prophet ﷺ? You need to understand the basic idea of the fixing price, and otherwise it is impossible to understand the entire discussion, right? So the basic idea of the fixing price, Prophet ﷺ said, I am not the price fixer. I cannot fix the price. I don't want to become the reason. I don't want to become the responsible for this. At the end of the day, in Yawm al-Qiyamah, in Akhirah, I don't want to come and see my Lord that I fixed some price, and that was, for some of them, is the positive impact. For some of them, it's a negative impact, right? Because you don't have the same kind of people, the same kind of time. You have a different kind of people, different kind of nature, different kind of resources they have it. So Prophet ﷺ said, I don't want to fix that price. Only Allah can fix the price. So now, what exactly that means? Only Allah can fix the price. We know that Allah is the sustainer. Allah is the khairul raziqin. He is the one who gives risk to everybody. We agree with that. But what about the price? Is it Allah is fixing the price? Let's say today I am buying a kilo of rice for 2 ringgit, for example. Yeah, so maybe I buy 10 kilo for 20 something, maybe 2 ringgit 50 cent, let's say. How exactly Allah is fixing this 2 ringgit 50 cent per kilo of rice? Isn't it the government is actually fixing the price? You got my point. So you need to understand from that point of view. So now, if you look into the mechanism of this pricing, if you look into the current market system, how it works, how this demand and how the supply chains are interconnected when it comes to pricing, and you can clearly understand when the price goes up, why there is an inflation, why there's a deflation. I think technically you can understand, because I think that's what you are specialist in, right? Because you're all economists. Technically, actually, you can understand how price goes up, how price goes down. But basically speaking, is the human heart is what actually playing the role, the biggest role of price fixing. It's actually humans' intention. You see now, when there is a plenty of rice and there is a little people want to use it, then the price is always low. When there is a shortage of rice and then there's a plenty of people wanted to take it, wanted to buy it, then always price goes up. So now the basic factor plays in this is actually human heart, human intention. Allah may make me or twist me not to buy the rice, go for wheat, go for khubuz, go for corn, right? Corns. I can go and eat some noodles, right? So you can see the part of the world now is working in that way. Not necessarily that I have to buy apple all the time. I can go for orange. I can go for pomegranate. I can go for some other, for example, banana. You can see some countries goes for mangoes, manga. So you can see that Allah is actually the one who is fixing the price by taking, putting the desires in you. So desires actually comes from the human heart, and then the desires, who is actually making the desire is actually Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now that is actually the basic idea of price fixing. So Prophet ﷺ said that, and later you can see that what happened during the of course during the Khulafa al-Rashidin. Of course, the mechanism of market pricing is actually you go to market and then you see the price, and then of course there's a custom. We follow the custom. People used to follow the custom, and then of course people buy and sell. Everybody knows the price. Yes, based on the quality and the quantity, the price goes up and down. It's always there, because you need to understand Makkah is based on business transaction, and Medina is actually based on farming and cultivation and harvesting. You need to understand these two different different kind of people. One are entrepreneurs, business people. The other one actually the creators, the producers, the farmers. Yeah. So now look at the idea of muhajirin. When muhajirin from Makkah came to Medina, because those days, do you know who were doing the business in Medina? Any idea? Do you know who were doing business in Medina before the arrival of Muhajirin? It was Yehudis. Jews and Christians, because they were buying the items from the Madani people, and then they were going and selling outside. But when Muhajirin came, Muhajirin said, "We are coming from Mecca. We don't have harvesting, but we know how to sell the product." So they took the product from the Medina, the Ansaris, and then they go to the market and then they start selling. That's how, the business people comes together with the production people. Yeah, so that's because you need markets, and then of course you need a production line, right? So later, when Imam, especially Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, he has to do. I know you heard about him. There were so many places that he has to do some ijtihad. He used to call people and then ask how to do this. After listening to everybody, every ulama, every sahabi, and then he will decide on something. So now, when it comes to price fixing, in that time, yeah, price fixing, it was actually a diya. What I mean by diya is actually blood money. So now that was the at that stage, because you know that people used to have a fight. There might be there was a war, always killing, this and that happening, and then there is always blood money is must be presented, which is actually diya. So the blood money was the blood money, the equivalence of the blood money of that time, uh, during the Prophet ﷺ time and during the Hazrat Umar time, has to be different, right? And then even the price, I mean the amount of dirham, the value of dirham is actually not the same like the value of dirham in Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu period. So there is a due to rise in prices. So, so in fact, Imam Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, even during his period also. So now there was a need to fix blood money in each and every period of time. It cannot be, for example, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked to do the blood money this amount, right? You cannot follow exactly the same the entire 1400 years. It has to be something, because Prophet ﷺ asked for that because of that amount, that value was there. Today, if there's a different value, we need to go for the different value, right? But we still stick to that principle. Let's say, for example, you need to pay 2.5 percentage of zakat, and Prophet ﷺ period, they were paying, let's say, 2 kilo of wheat for sadaqatul fitr. Then what exactly is today? Right, whether it's a 2.5 or sadaqatul fitr or zakatul fitr, you call it. These are the differences. What are the differences today? It has to be the principle we keep the same, but the value has to change according to today's, right? So now, when Imam Ibn Taimiyah brings the dealings, I mean the discussion of just price, he talks about two things. Number one, he talks about thaman al-misl, iwad al-misl. Iwad al-misl, which is actually compensation of the equivalent. Compensation of the equivalent, which is al-iwad, iwad al-misl. The other one is actually price of the equivalent. Thaman al-misl, right? Al-misl is actually equivalent. Thaman is the price, and iwad is the compensation. So what exactly these two things, right? I know you can go through the slides later, but you need to understand the basic thing. Then I hope you can understand the entire thing. What exactly is al-iwad al-misl? Is something that actually will be measured and assessed by the custom of the people. All right. So now, there were not necessary that they always use the coins or money to buy something. They always bring not only money, they always bring kinds. Like the barter exchange, they call it. So now, according to the custom, whatever has been going on, it is actually called al-iwad al-mithl, which is actually compensation of the equivalent. So now I brought 1 kilo of rice, or I brought 10 kilo of dates. So how many kilo I can get zaitun? What is exactly, or how many dirhams or how many dinars actually I can get for 10 kilo of dates, right? So this is actually something to do with the market, something to do with the customs, something to do with, you know, people, how they are dealing with. So this is what we call compensation of the equivalent, right? What exactly the price of the equivalent, the terms that he used, thaman al-mithl. Yeah, so thaman al-mithl is something that, you know, you are not so good, so clear about exactly how much for that. You know, this is something you only know if you are selling your goods. For example, people will say like this: it's your goods, so you tell the price. It's a kind of conversation start like that. It's your goods, you tell the price. Why they say that? Um, because you are the producer of that particular goods. You only know how much exactly you put for that product to come into the market. You exactly, for example, if someone is actually making the bread, someone is actually making the biscuit out of it. Someone you have actually, you are not actually selling the raw materials. You are not selling the flour, but you are converting the flour into something that eatable, into something that it's presentable, into something that it can be sold to somebody. So now, how exactly I should actually fix the price? How, what exactly, what, how do we call it? There is a just price for that particular item. First of all, you only know the cost. You only know how much labor you have paid for it, right? So it's a kind of analysis that people need to know, to know how much that you can sell for it. But there is also a problem because not everybody knows that how much exactly this one costs, isn't it? So this is where Imam Ibn Taimiyah say this is where he actually give more concentration on this exactly the just price, because people can sell for any price and he doesn't want that price go up like that. uh, for example, yeah, today, because there are so many examples, if you know the market how it functioning today, you can actually bring so many examples for this kind of thing. You know, starting from the jacket, you buy a jacket in a normal market and you buy the same jacket, you go to a boutique, you see the different prices. Yeah, so you buy a shoe from the normal market and then you go to a place which has a different setup, different setting, like kind of mall or something, or maybe there is a brand name or something, right? You will see the differences. Sometimes you see the shirt that exactly the same quality if you buy from certain countries, but you buy the same thing with a logo on it, and then you buy from some other company, some other countries, and you will see the different prices. Yeah. So now I think he really makes sense to me. I think Imam Ibn Taimiyah, he identified this culture of pricing how many years ago? Today we are in 2020s. It's almost 800 years ago. 800 years ago, he started observing this. Today, you can clearly see why this capitalistic idea, why this capitalism is actually enjoying wealth and money and everything, uh, just because of this. You can fix any price, and as long as you are in the market and you have all sort of uh, strength to show. For example, you can actually do advertisement, you can hire the great famous people for your company, and then you can show to the world that you have the best product, and you make everybody to come and buy your product. And then you add and you add the price, and then you take the price. You also ask people to pay for the advertisement. It's not that it's not you are actually paying from your pocket. When I buy a particular handphone, I don't only buy the handphone. Remember this. This is the idea today. I don't buy only the handphone today. I also buy the advertisement of that handphone, right? I also buy the insurance of that handphone. I also buy the rental that they are paying, the rental that they are paying to keep and to make that phone reach to me. I also pay the delivery of that product come to me. I know these are the costs. I understand. You understand. I understand. You know the cost and everything. I didn't actually criticize it, but I'm just giving you an idea how price increasing and what are the factors that price can increase. This is only one side of price increasing. There are so many other sides, the political. Sometimes there's a war zone. Sometimes, especially the COVID-19, that currently we are having problem with the goods, and so many countries out there, they don't have the valid goods, necessary goods and all. So mashallah, he talks about everything. I want you to just go through these slides. I think he talks about all this. He talks about two kinds of prices: unjust and prohibited prices. Yeah, Ibn Taymiyah's just compensation and just prices are not the same. I told you, right? Just compensation, just price, which is actually iwad al-misl, which is just compensation, and then you have saman al-misl, which is a just price, right? There is a moral and legal obligations, ethical obligations, right? He talks about all this. He also brings three principles. There are three cases following the principles. He talks about when a person is held responsible for causing injury to others' lives, because you see, someone is injuring the life of someone. We call it compensation. Someone killed someone mistakenly, and he has to pay the blood money. Now tell me, on what basis actually you are going to get that money? It will be very difficult to price the human life, because the human life can earn millions or billions. Are you ready to pay billion ringgit for that one life that you mistakenly killed? Because the children is going to suffer because you mistakenly killed that father. The grandchildren is going to suffer because you mistakenly killed the grandfather, right? So, and then the community, and then the neighborhood, and then the wife, the mother, the parent, the father. So how exactly we are going to compensate, right? So it has to be different. It has to be according to the condition of that time. So he talks about the principle is involved, and then there is also equivalent goods or profit. There is also settlement of invalid contracts and valid contracts, right? Then the same principle he applies to payment of dues, grants made by the governor to the Muslims and orphans. So how exactly you keep that grant? How are you so sure that the grant that you want to provide is actually good enough for the orphans and the trust? Also compensation by a business agent who is agent for the payment of compensation, remuneration by a business partner. So right, so these are the things that he talks about. Defining the compensation of equivalent, says it is the equivalent amount that particular object is the prevailing usage. So just go through all this. He talks about the same thing I told you, compensation of equivalent for the former, price of the equivalent for the later. Because if it is ethical, legal, and there's another one is economic aspect of just price. So ethical, legal is actually comes with compensation of the equivalent, and economic aspect is actually coming to price of the equivalent, which is the just price. You see, that's why today our economy is actually favor to some people and is not favor to some people, and we always criticize each other. And it's all because of, you know, this price that today we are fixing has a biggest role to play the economic aspect of our life. Right. So yes, he also talks about ta'asir al-mal. So this is the another subject. He talks about the wage of equivalent. What exactly, how much exactly we have to pay for your work. How do we actually how do we measure how much you have how much work that you have given, on what basis it should be done, right? He also talks about labor is allowed in normal conditions to charge the wage determination by bilateral bargaining between employer and employee, right? It's simply not like, you know, okay, I agree, so you pay. It's not like simply like that. You see, for example, let's say you want to do editing work, for example, for someone, and then he asks you how much you want me to pay you, and then and then you say just pay whatever you think right, or without understanding that the work that whatever the work, the editing work you are going to do, without understanding how much value that will make, how much value that will be to that person that who hired you, and in fact you are actually getting a little amount. For example, you say I charge 5 ringgit per page, but in fact the person who hired you, he might sell to someone for 50 ringgit per page. So now the real original editing work that you have done for 5 ringgit, but the one who took from you the work and then started selling to someone for 50 ringgit. So now how exactly are we talking about? Because now conventionally this is correct, right? Conventionally you will be saying, yeah, I agree to 5 ringgit and I don't care about whether he sell for 50 ringgit or 100 ringgit. Conventionally speaking, it looks okay, good, but where is the just price? Where is the just wage? So these are the things actually what we exactly need to talk in Islamic economics. I think he has so many things to talk about. How is the wage of the equivalent is to be determined? I think I'm taking too much time. So I think I will stop here. Then we will talk about market mechanism, inshallah, in our next class. And then I will try to finish the entire. I have 43 slides, by the way. Hopefully I can finish, or I will just give it to you to read. Okay, this is the attendance.